Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Chicago, Zooming with the Alderman interview series. The League is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes political candidates. It was founded right here in Chicago 101 years ago and is now active in all 50 states and the US Virgin Islands. We are a wide network. The League works to increase understanding of public policy and to encourage informed, active participation in how we govern ourselves. It seeks to influence public policy through education and advocacy. Our interviews with the aldermen are an example of the League's work to educate voters about the individuals who speak on their behalf at the Chicago City Council. The City Council develops the policies and the ordinances that govern our city. Hi, my name is Ilona Vaishnis, and today our guest is Alderman Howard Brookins Jr. of the 21st Ward. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome for making time for this interview because you really had to make time for it. Thank you. To the audience, this session is being recorded and it will be available on the League website. And we provided the questions ahead of time to Alderman Brookins. Let us start by taking a look at a map of all 50 wards in Chicago. And then a lot of wards, 50. And now let's take a look at the 21st ward. So the 21st ward. Alderman Brookins, what are the main boundaries of your ward?
So the general square of the ward is from 79th Street on the north to 99th Street on the south, the Dan Ryan on the east, and as far west as Damon.
What are the neighborhoods in your ward?
Auburn Gresham, Washington Heights, and just a slither of Beverly.
And is your ward residential, commercial, industrial?
It is residential and mostly single family homes. There are very few multi-family dwellings within the 21st ward.
And what would you say are the main concerns of the people in your ward?
I think they always come down to quality of life issues. We had some unrest with respect to the looting when it happened a year ago, but we've also had some unfortunate incidents where there have been some people who have been shot. And so quality of life and public safety, police concerns are always at the number one of complaints that we get. And that can even go as far as just, people speeding down Ashland or 95th Street.
You are now serving your 5th term. What keeps motivating you to run for another term?
Yeah, and it gets increasingly more difficult each year. So the main issue is that some 50 plus years ago, my father decided to leave the Chicago Police Department and open a business. So we have a family business located on 93rd and Ashland. When we moved there in 1970 and I was a little kid, the neighborhood was changing. And my father and several other concerned citizens started to fight for more schools and more opportunities for the new residents that were moving into the area. And it has been my desire to make that areas in which I represent better and get back to, some would say, the good old days, but when we had plenty of grocery stores, small retail merchants in the area. People were significantly employed. It was a solid middle income community. And my question was, how can I get my contemporaries to see this area, which my parents believe in and I believe in because I came back home to the neighborhood, so that they would set up and want to have their families there. And so that's what really keeps motivating me, is to continue to build a great foundation for where, middle income families would want to raise their children there.
Do you currently have additional employment?
I do. I have several employments.
Hmm.
I am an attorney, and I still practice law, and I am a licensed funeral director, and I do help in my family business.
All right. Keeps you busy, doesn't it?
It does, and my parents are older, and so it keeps me exceptionally busy.
I guess so. Uh, Alderpersons make up the Chicago City Council. What committees do you serve on?
I, I should have wrote that down. So I am currently the chairman of Transportation and Public Way. I'm on the Budget and Finance Committee. Everybody's on the Rules Committee. I am on, oh, off the top of my head, I need to look at a list. But those are the major committees that I'm on: Budget, Finance. I'm chairman of Transportation. I'm on the Rules Committee. There are two or three other committees that just escape me right now.
Do you have any opinions about how the city council operations could be improved?
Well, city council is one thing, and to improve the services through the city will require us to work hand in glove with the mayor to potentially streamline things. I think that there is a reasonably decent system now that when people have issues with respect to city services, aldermen pretty much act like an ombudsman. While we don't have any direct um, executive authority over any of the agencies, based on practice and custom, our input has been valued, and so we tend to get things done. This has tended to work, and we have seen that in this pandemic, that things have gotten a little bit slower, in part because the new technology, we all of us hadn't early on embraced that, and so we had to get up to start. So I think that things are coming, and things are changing for the better. Zoom meetings change and allow people who may have had to be at work or couldn't view what was going on in city council. It brings it to everybody's home. It allows them to participate also with respect to the public comment section. So I think that there are some things that we're going to learn out of this pandemic that make things easier and make things more open and transparent to the public out there, and allow more people to participate should they desire to.
Okay. You mentioned gun violence. Are there any actions by the city to reduce gun violence that you think have been effective or will be effective?
I think we're stuck. And the city lost several series of Supreme Court challenges, especially with respect to the Hiller decision, and it really opened it up for the ability for everybody to have guns, so to speak, and to have very few limits on the city's ability to curtail who was able to have a gun, whether or not they were able to carry it, etc. And so, unless and until there is uh, uh, a constitutional change, or unless and until there's a change in the makeup of the Supreme Court and they suddenly decide to reinterpret it, the Second Amendment, a different way, it is going to be hard for the city of Chicago and other major cities to keep guns out, especially as long as you have our neighbors to the uh, uh, east of us in Indiana and our neighbors to the north of us in Wisconsin and all around us with gun laws that are significantly less stringent than ours. And so people are going to have access to guns, and I just don't know how you stop that violence. Y- and everybody says, and I do believe that jobs and opportunities help, but the people in my community want you to stop shooting me first, and then I'll try and get you a job. But I can't concentrate on getting you a job if I'm being shot at.
The city council has decided not to have an independent commission draw the new ward maps. Alas. The older people will be drawing those maps now. During our series of interviews with the older people, the League has seen that many neighborhoods are divided among two, three, four, even five different wards. Should the city council members keep neighborhoods in a single ward, or at most two wards?
Yes and no, and the problem is that the 77 neighborhoods are uh, on paper, and the boundaries have drawn. The boundaries are defined with respect to those 77 neighborhoods, but within those 77 neighborhoods, there are different communities and neighborhoods that overlap. They, it doesn't take into account major streets or major impediments or other things that will define a community that may be outside those specific boundaries of the 77 neighborhoods. And you kind of don't know this unless you're within these communities. And I know that everybody points to, for example, on the south side, Inglewood, that may have five different aldermen representing various parts of Inglewood. Um, with that said, there may be parts of Inglewood that make absolute sense to keep together and intact and represented by one person. And across the street may be a totally different vibe, even though they call that Inglewood also. And so I would say that most of the time, the aldermen understand their communities better than somebody looking at it uh, up above and not seeing the entire lay of the land, street by street, block by block, to understand what goes on within these communities.
Well, what should the criteria be for drawing the revised map? It sounds impossible.
Well, it is gonna well it, it is going to be not quite impossible, but it is made difficult based on the census and understanding that every ward has to have approximately the same or equal number of residents. If you take the various 77 neighborhoods out there are some with the explosion of population, say for example in Streeterville and in the downtown area, you may have a difficult time trying to keep one alderman in that particular area because it may be too big. There may be other areas that are increasingly too small, and so that they're going to have to take up multiple areas. And then you have to take into account legally protected classes like African Americans and Hispanics, and even potentially Asian people now who may live in multiple areas or multiple um, may live in close proximity to each other, but stay in multiple neighborhoods as defined by the 77 different neighborhoods that are outlined in the Chicago map. So, yes, I agree with you that it does seem a daunting and almost impossible task, but we have managed to do it uh, since since the beginning of the city charter.
Okay. Okay. During the election for mayor or for alderman in February, when a candidate does not receive at least 50% plus one vote, the two vote getters have a runoff election in April. Some states are choosing to avoid a runoff election by switching to ranked choice voting. Uh, Ranked choice voting does away with a runoff election because it uses the votes already cast. Before asking you what you think about switching to ranked choice voting in Chicago, let me remind our viewers of how ranked choice voting works. In ranked choice voting, a voter ranks the candidates on their ballot by his or her order of preference. First choice, my first choice, my second choice, my third, fourth choice, and so on. If the first choice ranked candidate of most of the people gets 50% plus one vote, that candidate wins, just like now. If there is no majority winner, this is what happens. The candidate who got the fewest votes is eliminated. Then the ballots who had listed the eliminated candidate as their first choice are reviewed to see who was their second choice. And now that second choice candidate is assigned a vote. And that second choice candidate now is assigned, in other words, I get confused, as do many, I guess. So help me out. Help me out.
So, so in ranked choice voting, everybody you get to choose to rank your choices in preference for the candidates who are running one, two, three, four, five, six, etc. If nobody gets a clear majority, then they, yes, you're right, they eliminate the one who got the fewest number of choices, and then determine if uh, the second choice uh, gets that next person over the 50%, and you keep eliminating until somebody has a clear majority.
Right.
And I hope
Okay.
I
So
articulated
that
that.
we have got this out of the way, what is your opinion about going to ranked choice voting in Chicago?
So I am not a fan of ranked choice voting. And I am not a fan of ranked choice voting because, in theory, somebody who was not the plurality's first or second choice could win the election because they was everybody's third choice. Or uh, so I am not a fan, and I'm also not a fan because the way you would campaign in a ranked choice voting is slightly different than you would in the current system we have. Um, in that you are trying to get as many choices as possible, which means that uh, you are coddling uh, to the number one or the number two's constituency just in case they get knocked out. And so, therefore, even if there was negative information out there that if the public knew, they may make a different decision. If you're campaigning and not wanting to turn off that person's constituency, you may not bring that information out, and it never comes up. And so for that reason, I am not necessarily a big fan of that. And as a person that has been in 4 runoffs, um, the runoff election becomes a binary choice, and you tend to figure out everything about that other candidate, and um, the general public is allowed to make the determination as to, out of these people who've had uh, the plurality of the two top vote getters, which would have the plurality of the vote, making a choice in between them, and it really incentivizes you to make comparison and contrast between the candidates who are there, as opposed to with ranked choice voting.
Okay.
Because as I tell people, as long as your son is in the race with me, you'll never vote for me. And if I do something that you are mad about because I call out something about your son or your candidate, and I'm just using the son out there, then that may mean, okay, well, I hate him because he said this about my guy, and now I'm not going to rank him high or at all.
All right. Now, if the league wanted to support one of your initiatives, what in what way could the league support you? For example, could the league ask its members to call or write their alder people, or send written communications from the league to the appropriate committee, or to all members of the city council, or in some other way?
The league could do all of the above and also help with respect to um, its collective expertise of its members. And so sometimes I tell people all the time that as an alderman, I don't know all of the right questions to ask, and I don't have all of the answers, but together we can solve the problems that we have as a society. And sometimes it just takes talking out to a wide berth of people to figure out what are the best practices to resolve the issues that we have. And so the more people that are out there in organizations and able, who may have come across some of these issues, the more it helps me help the people who I represent. And so when I say that, I think that all of those things and would help me, uh, should the league decide to help advocate for one of my positions.
Okay, thank you. Your term ends in 2023. What are several things that you would like to get done during that time, or at least get started?
So I have been one big on economic development, and in part because I believe that the greatest deterrent to crime is having a job. And so from day one, when I first ran for alderman, and every election since, I've been harping on trying to continue to build up the neighborhoods in the district or ward in which I represent. And we've had a modicum of success in bringing several businesses there, but we have to keep doing it. We also have to continue to build up our housing stock and make it really attractive for middle income families to be comfortable. But I also know that if you're a middle income family and you have to travel out to the suburbs every weekend to buy the staples for your house, you might as well live in the suburbs. And so I think that that is why it goes hand in glove in building up the community with goods and services that people need, but also having housing stock that people want to live in within the community. And we've been trying to do both at the same time, and we've had some success in doing that, but we want to continue to keep that going. um I also think that we need to be forward thinking with respect to the new technologies that are out there. And whether they are micro mobility devices such as electronic scooters and electric bikes, but also with respect to the electric vehicles and charging stations, et cetera, and that we need to be forward thinking as to how we deal with that as a city, especially if we're anticipating a slew of infrastructure money to come in and fix infrastructure. So, what does that look like? Are there charging stations on blocks? Are they? Do we mandate businesses have charging stations, or do we give significant incentives for charging stations? Do we carve out more hard boundaries for bikes and scooters, etc.? What about geo fencing for electric micro mobility devices? And so all of those things I have diverse interests in working with trying to figure those things out, but knowing that if we figure those things out, that the communities in which I represent will be viewed as progressive, and younger families will want to move into those areas.
Okay, okay. Well, good luck. Good luck. Alderman Brookins, thank you so much for being with us today. You are helping many Chicagoans become acquainted with the 21st Ward. We'll be sending you, Alderman, a link to the video of this interview, and everyone who registered today for today's program and is not a league member will receive an email with a link to this interview and also an invitation to sign up for notices of our future programs, and also an invitation to join the league, because we're always looking for civic-minded people, Democrats and Republicans and unaffiliated, who, men and women and men since 1974, who would like to become more informed about how we govern ourselves and who believe that strengthening democracy is worth their time. We hope that all of you will join us often as we learn about Chicago and its elected officials, one ward at a time. And thank you.
Thank you for having me.